Hey everyone, it's JazzaSings. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to flashlight, juke, and loop. Hopefully, I can show you something here because I know that a lot of people are having trouble, so I decided that I wanted to make a video for those who just can't seem to get it yet, and this is a more up-to-date tutorial, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Without further ado, let's get started. Flashlighting, or flashlight saving, is essentially you trying to blind the killer as soon as he gains mobility. So when a survivor is getting picked up by a killer, you have to have direct timing to flash the light at the killer's face, thus freeing the survivor from his grip. I know that timing can be a little tricky, but what usually helps me is watching the killer's hand. When the killer's hand reaches his face, it means the pickup animation is complete, and that's when you should be flashlighting, as soon as it reaches the face. Be aware that not all killers are going to sit in the same spot, because if they expect you to flashlight, they're going to expect you to be right there, so they will turn around and look at you like you're dumb and then walk away while you wreak in failure. If you plan to become a flashlighter after this video, please keep in mind perks such as Lightborn, where it gives the killers an increased resistance to flashlighting by 80%, meaning whether it's at a pallet or a flashlight save, it will be extremely hard to blind them. As you can see here in the next clip, poor Steve tried to flashlight me and it didn't really work out too well for him. Some honorable mentions would be Hag, Demogorgon, and Pyramid Head. I wanted to include them because these are three of the killers that people have difficult with, because one, Hag is very short. So with Hag, what you need to do is move back some. Where you would normally flashlight a killer, with Hag you would just move back, and it's still the same applies to her. The hand right at the face, but you have to be further back because she is a tiny killer. Demogorgon doesn't have a face. I don't know what that is, but it's not a face. So he also has a weird pickup animation, so sometimes it's kind of hard to get it on him, but you would still flash him the same area you would flash anyone else. Pyramid Head, on the other hand, does not have a face. He has a cone, a metal cone, whatever you want to call that, but this same applies here. A lot of people just don't really know where to flashlight. You still need to flash Pyramid Head in what would be his face, in the same direction. Nothing changes. It has to be in the center of the cone. And in this video, I added the two arrows to show you the flashlight focus beam. And usually when you see that thinning, it means that you're getting the blind on the killer. Earlier I mentioned that some killers will be aware that you have a flashlight and will turn around to avoid getting blinded. If you run from behind the killer fast enough, you'll still be able to catch the same timing that I was teaching you guys earlier. It's a little harder, but once you get used to the regular flashlight saving, you will get the hang of it. It's also possible to blind killers on an angle, but be careful because you only have about 60 degrees before you can't blind them anymore, because you'll be out of their field of vision. Moving on to special flashlight saves, we have first the CJ Tech. The CJ Tech is when you down a pallet on a fallen survivor that is inside of said pallet, and you have to throw the pallet down, forcing the killer to pick up the survivor, where you will jump over the pallet and back over and flashlight again. This is extremely difficult, especially if you're still new to flashlighting and learning how to do it. I wouldn't recommend it. Instead, I'd recommend a regular pallet save such as this, where all you would have to do is wait for the killer to gain mobility. Like I said, it's almost the same as regular flashlighting, except you're waiting just a little tiny bit longer, as you can see there. Also, don't forget that you can also blind killers while they're breaking pallets or jumping through windows. Moving over to juking, I want to make a disclaimer that juking should probably only be used as an emergency. When there are no pallets or windows around is the only time that you should actually use this. Most killers know how to compensate for juking, so it's probably best that you have a pallet nearby, but I will show you how to do it because it can be viable. Also keep in mind that I do play on PS4, so the juking that you see Twitch streamers and YouTubers do are a little different because I am on a joystick while they're on mouse and keyboard. Anyway, I'm gonna show you now how to get started. First things first, you want to learn how to look behind yourself. Looking behind yourself lets you know the distance you have between the killer, and it also is a lot safer than just running and then the killer can cut you off easily because you don't know how close they are to you, and then you can end up like this. As killer, you can tell when a survivor is looking behind themselves when their head is leaning and looking back towards you. Usually these are the survivors that are a little harder to get because they can tell the difference between themselves and you, so just be careful of that. The next thing you want to learn is the spin. I find this spin the most effective. This one kinda where your character looks like they're running backwards, and that's how you know you're doing it right. Opposed to the ones you see PC players like that one, I find this one a little bit more effective on console. When using this juke, essentially what you're doing is confusing the killer's auto aim. Killers do have a sort of kind of auto aim, so it's better to use it for things like that. For a killer like Pyramid Head, since his weapon is so massive than all the other killers on this game, it's better to do the juke a little early so that the whip comes out just a little later. And in this clip, you'll see that sometimes your spin won't always come out, which is why I say that pallets are a little bit more effective than juking. Looking behind yourself is very valuable on this game. As you can see in this clip, I'm looking behind myself and in front of myself to see where I'm going and the distance between Spirit and I. Since the Spirit does have a sword, she's technically a ranged killer, but with all killers, you want to make sure you get that juke out before the red stain reaches your survivor. Also be careful of Unrelenting, which is a perk that helps the killer recuperate faster from missed attacks, so if you swing and they miss, then they'll probably get to you the second time, so just be careful of that. Once you get the hang of juking, you'll notice that not all killers are going to take the same timing. For Michael, his has to be a little quick because he has a short range knife and you have to juke a little faster for him. When a killer notices that you're juking them too much, they'll start to wait out your jukes. They'll stand back and watch you finish and then swing, so it's kind of hard to compensate because those are killers do know how to, which is why I recommend pallets and windows more than I prefer juking. Moving over to looping, which is probably the longest section of this video. Looping is essentially using the pallet or a window for as long as you can to waste the killer's time. Killers do gain bloodlust, so eventually you will lose the chase going on around a pallet unless they swing or you stun them, which makes them lose a tier of bloodlust. I want to mention that there are a plethora of killers that have anti-loop abilities, including Huntress, Nurse, Hag, Spirit, Trapper, Doctor, Freddy, Legion, Gunslinger, Pyramid Head, and Clown. I didn't include the Plague because she's basically like the Huntress, except replace the hatchets with vomit and there you have it. When looping, you want to make sure that you hug tight tightly to whatever it is that you're looping around, whether it's a rock or these tires and a generator, but not to the point where you get stuck on them, because that can happen and it's very detrimental. If you're looping what loop you're at correctly, it'll look like this on the killer's point of view. You basically aren't able to be seen except for your scratch marks. There are some killers where you have to make sure that you throw the pallet down early because they have projectiles. So I usually do it against either a huntress or a pyramid head because they have something that can reach around the pallet. If it were any other normal killer that didn't have a projectile, I would wait until I feel like I can't get another loop out of said loop before I throw the pallet down. Also, once again, looking behind yourself is extremely important, especially when looping a killer, because when you jump over a pallet, you're gonna have to see where the distance they are between you and them. You don't always have to loop at pallets either. Usually when you can find a building that has a door and a window, something like this, it is really effective. The only thing about this, it might be hard for those who don't know how to loop because of the wall, and killers will try to do that to you. So just keep in mind that when going around here, you want to make sure that you're looking behind yourself so that you can see the stain. Sometimes you'll have to juke and get back to where you were, but you don't always have to loop at a pallet, even though they are extremely helpful. So if you find a loop that has one, please do not be afraid to use it. I usually like to throw the pallets down when I notice that the killer is gaining bloodlust. And bloodlust is when the killer is chasing you for X amount of time and they gain more movement speed. Also, once a killer breaks the pallet, it's time for you to run away and then find another loop for you to waste the killer's time. When looping, be careful of perks such as Spirit, Fury, and Enduring, because when you notice that a killer has those on, they're not afraid to swing through pallets. Be careful not to be too greedy when looping. As you see, I could have been through the pallet down, but I was hit because I decided that I wanted another loop. Also note that not every pallet that you come across is going to be able to be looped, such as this one, which is considered a safe pallet because there are no windows or doors that a killer can pass through in order to cut you off, thus giving you more space to run away. When looping shack, it's better to hug the wall unless you plan on looping it in a way where you'll jump through the window. Therefore, you'd have to lean back, otherwise you will get a slow vault and thus getting hit. When looping the shack, it can be a little difficult due to the walls. You have to make sure that you're looking in the nooks and crannies to make sure that you can see the bloodstain of the killer to see which way they're going, because moonwalking can definitely play a part in this and get you killed. There may be times where you mess up, then having to rely on a juke to give you a little bit more leeway. I will show you a little bit more on how to use these shack loops more effectively. Using T-walls correctly will get you a total of 6 jumps before the windows are blocked by the entity. While in a chase, jumping through a window 3 times will close it off for 3 minutes. If you run this loop correctly and the killer runs the way that you need them to run, you will get those 6 total jumps. Moonwalking is a mind game used by killers to hide their bloodstain around the loop. It can be a little hard to tell if they're doing it, but you kind of have to use your instinct and your eyes to see if they're coming around or not, because they can swing pretty fast. So just be aware of that. Stutter stepping is usually used on killers who are afraid to swing through pallets in fear of getting hit. It's when you stand there for a second, acting like you're going to throw the pallet down, thus making the killer stop, and then you can get at least a loop or two out of it. Window juking is acting like you're going to jump for the window, then making a quick turn, causing the killer to miss, and then you can jump out of the window after. A window sneak is when you crouch under the killer as they're coming out of the window. Usually it's used as Shaq and against Michael, but it can work for other killers. But keep in mind that using it on shorter killers can be a little harder because they will see you, and killers do compensate when they come out of a window by looking behind them. A window fake is when you're looping, usually at Shaq, and you act like you're gonna jump in the window, but then you don't, causing the killer to miss because they think you're gonna jump. Remember that not all killers fall for mind games. Usually there are killers who aren't afraid to swing through pallets or anything like that, and they will swing. In this clip I was supposed to pallet fake, but instead I went over the pallet thinking that he'd fall for it, and then I got downed. That's just about it. I went over juking, pallet looping, and flashlighting. I hope this tutorial was able to help any of you. If you guys have any questions, you know that you can just contact me. I'll leave my social media in the description. If there's any other tutorials you would like me to go through and make a video for you, please let me know, and I will do the best that I can. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you become a better survivor after this. See you all in the fog. Be safe.